I can be a little modest mouse sometimes too, but this has all of my notes. I don't want to miss anything about being a woman in photography. So yes, okay, 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 good. All right, so it's a great honor and a thrill for me to be here with all of you tonight. Thank you for giving me this chance. Thank you to the Crown Prince and to Mohammed and to, yes, of course, to all, yes, thank you so much. And to Engi, to all of you. Yeah, 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 thank you so much. Thank you to my friend, Lucia, who's come all the way from New York just to be his moral support, and to everybody out there in the world who's watching this streaming live. Thank you. Don't turn it off. It's going to get more exciting as we go on. So, what I'm trying to get across tonight is that to be a woman in photography, you have to be many different things. When I was asked, what am I, by Mohammed in the early days, of how to express myself, I said I'm a question mark. I don't really know sometimes. I'm a worker, I'm a photographer, I'm a mother, I'm a sister, I'm a friend. I'm so many things. I'm a dreamer. But number one, I work very hard. I work hard in the home. I work hard for my family. I work hard as a photographer. I have to do everything as a photographer because I don't have an agency. I don't have an agent. I work on my own. I have to create my own stories. And I realized at a very young age, here I am in 1973, on the first day of my job as a secretary. And I was so proud to be a secretary, to be able to make money, to support my husband so he could go to law school. I was totally in love with this man. I thought this would be my love for the rest of my life. But women are complicated. We don't like to be put in a box, really. It's very hard to be kept in a box when we have a lot of dreams and ambitions of our own. So I was very, very happy to support Mark, and he became a great attorney, a very big-time attorney. And in the end, he started to prosecute the Hells Angels, bringing them down as a corporation. So he was a character. But as soon as he became an attorney, I realized I didn't want to be a wife. I had to get out of that relationship. And we parted as friends eventually. And I've been able to have this incredible career as a photographer by never fitting into anybody's box. This is me after I'd gotten a divorce. I decided I needed to get out in the world. I took my little camera, like we were talking, the woman photographer was talking earlier, how she always keeps her camera. Tell me your name again? Mason. Yes, that really touched me. That reached a real chord because I keep my camera always. In fact, many times when I was traveling, I had nothing but a knapsack, little bag on my back, because all I needed was the essentials to live, but I had to have that camera all the time. So in getting ready to go on a trip across to Europe on my own with the little bit of money I saved and my camera, I decided that I needed to do a self-portrait. So what I did was I powdered up my hair because I always respected old women. And I know that people would look at me back in those days and say, "You're just a silly girl. What do you know? You don't know anything." And they wouldn't take me seriously. So I was fantasizing of what that would be like when I was an old woman and I had the experience and the real power in my body. And I posed myself in my mother's and father's bathroom, locked the door, put the camera on a tripod, and did this, put her lipstick on, did this picture where I'm lunging at the camera. I'm getting ready to go out in life. This is a true story. What happened was with this film was that I put it in the drawer after it was developed. I put it away for many years, probably 25 years. And then all those decades later, I looked at the film, and here were these bolts coming out of my head, like the picture of Dorian Gray. It's so important that you listen to your heart and you follow your dream and you accept all the challenges of being an independent thinker and believe in yourself. Because if I didn't believe in myself, nobody would have believed in me. My parents were always telling me I was going to be a homeless beggar. My father told me I wasn't good with math or science, so I would never become a photographer. When I eventually started to go to magazines with a portfolio of pictures that I'd taken, more street photographs, but good portraits, the editors would look at me and say, "These aren't good pictures because you don't show me that you know how to use filters. You don't show me you know how to use flash." I have many big-time photographers who work for me. This was John Dominus at People magazine in 1979. He looked at my portfolio and he said, "Why should I give you a job? You're just a girl, and I have all these important guys who need jobs and they need to feed their families." And he was very angry with me for even daring to go into his office. And I just looked at him and I said, and I was quiet, I didn't shout at him, but I said, "You should give me a job because I think I can show you something that none of these men have ever shown you." And then he calmed down and he gave me a job. And that was the beginning of my working in the Time Life company back in the late 70s, early 80s. Here's my mother and father. Now, my mother was a very strong woman, but very quiet, very proud, very dignified, very Catholic, very rigid. She loved my father very much, but my dad was a wild man. He was a heart surgeon. He was a passionate photographer. He loved people. He loved saving lives. He loved women. Nobody could control my father. As the years went by, we found out that he was manic bipolar. And as a young man, as a very poor man who, is son of immigrant parents from Italy, he had to do everything for himself. Nobody ever gave him a leg up or a handout or anything. He didn't inherit anything except for the drive to live and to contribute. So my mother and I, we loved him. We saw when he went depressed, we worried about him. This is where he was starting to go into his first big depressions in life. We were always there for him, though. Mom never gave up on him. When I was with my little knapsack and my camera, that's a very complicated story about what I did in Paris and how I got there on the QE2. But what happened was I had to run away from people because every man that I met tried to put me in a harem, tried to keep me down. I'm not fooling, harems. This was back in the late 70s. And this was an American man, a big-time artist who thought he could put me into his home with all these women and that I would be there just to take care of him and all of his children. I ran away. And I started wandering around in Paris, and I was looking, and all of a sudden I saw all these people walking around with baguettes, fresh bread, naked. I never saw naked bread like this because in America, the bread is always wrapped up. It's put into cellophane or paper bags. You know, so I became obsessed. I would follow people in the streets everywhere. I would photograph them with one baguette or many baguettes for your children, or baguettes on the floor in the bars where the dogs would pee all over. I was I was shocked at how natural a loaf of bread was, because to the French, the bread is the staff of life. That's also very important in my mind, the staff of life. So I did a whole story on that, you know, and I never showed the pictures to anybody. I just kept taking the pictures, going to events like this. And when I went back to the States, when I would see demonstrations out in the streets where women were demonstrating against beauty contests because they felt so manipulated and humiliated by beauty contests. And so I would take pictures there. I didn't know. I didn't really think like a feminist. I just knew that I was a free spirit. That's what I was going for all my life. This was in Studio 54. You know, one of my early assignments was to just go to Studio 54 and photograph all the great movie stars. But one night when I was there and I was standing on the red carpet and I watched Robert De Niro come in out of his limousine, and he was like, he had just finished Raging Bull, and he was like the Raging Bull as he was walking up the red carpet, and he hated photographers. My job was to photograph him. And I saw how one woman went to photograph him, and he grabbed her flash, he grabbed her camera, he threw them on the sidewalk and stomped on him like that. And oh man, I don't want to get that. I don't want to be treated like that. So then I would just go into Studio 54 and photograph all the madness that I was seeing in there. For me, this was, again, these kinds of pictures were helping me pave my way as a woman who was paying attention to how women were being treated. In this situation, she's being treated like a piece of meat. I didn't like that. I met Philip Jones Griffiths, the incredible war photographer, and we became very close, and we loved each other, most of all because he was 15 years older than me, and he was already so established at Magnum. In fact, at that time he was the president. He didn't have any petty competitiveness with me. He was happy to see a woman who was coming into her real free spiritness. And so he always believed in me. And even if magazines didn't want to give me assignments, even if everybody else thought I was a little bit odd and strange, he believed in me. We had our daughter Fanny, born at home. He was very loving with her. She was always loved so much by everybody. Our photography community was our family. And so they all helped us all the time. We would go on these trips together. And I would photograph him all the time, and he would photograph me all the time. And my father would photograph us all the time, and we would all photograph each other all the time. And that's how we became fast shooters. Fast. You've got to be fast. You've got to be able to anticipate what's coming at you. In this picture here, this is right after I won the Eugene Smith back in 1986. We're in Paris. Philip's doing a Magnum meeting. He's typing out his notes. Here's Fanny leaping for her mama, who's hardly, she's a hard one to hold on to. And I'm taking a family portrait of us through a mirror. I was always doing these selfies, I think so many of us photographers are like that. We're always doing selfies. And then I would watch my little girl and see how obsessed she was with religion. I wasn't. I always fought against the Catholic religion. I didn't believe in it because to me Catholicism was my father always said he would never trust a Catholic priest who didn't believe in having sex. He thought that there were too many perverts in the Catholic Church. So he told me to stay away from them. And I was very happy. And Philip was a total atheist. So we tried to help Fanny to see that. But of course she went the opposite way. She was obsessed. And we called her the saint in those days. But that's where I formed my earliest idea that the patriarchy can be found in the Holy Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Ghost. The fact that they can't even put the mother of God on the same plane as God and the Son always drove me crazy. You know, I have a real problem with that, with the roots of patriarchy. Here's a picture many, many, many years later, as Philip is dying of liver cancer after he struggled for 10 years to beat it, and he kept doing new books. And Fanny and I would go and we would stay there with him, and he has another daughter, Catherine, and we were with him the last month of his life every minute of the day. In fact, you know, as he was dying, we were all in the bed with him, holding him. But what struck me was when Don McCullen would come to visit Philip. And I didn't want to interfere when he would be talking to Philip, but I noticed that many times when Philip would go to take Don's hand, Don would run away out into the garden, and I would find him crying. One day I said to him, "Don, why are you crying? What's the matter? What is it that's happening between you and Philip that you can't deal with?" He said, "Donna, you know, I love Philip so much. He's my best friend, and I don't know what I'm going to do when he goes. But I can't hold his hand. That's for Pooftas. I can't do that." He said, "This is against everything that I am as a man." So he was afraid to do it. And I said, "Don, you stop it right now. You hold his hand. You put your arms around him. You show him that you love him." If you go to the internet and you look up this movie called The Magnificent One, you will see how this whole story played out. I made a movie about Philip with the help of my daughter Fanny and her amazing videos. And then and a young photographer who was working for me, he actually did the video shooting. We interviewed all the great photographers of Magnum in this video about Philip. And you really should take a look at that. Remember, it's called The Magnificent One. And Philip truly was the magnificent one. Here, he's holding Don McCullen's hand, and he's saying to him, "Don't worry, Don. People aren't giving assignments. It's always going to be tough for the living photographers. But someday, people will hold your hand and tell you how important you have been to their lives as photographers." Philip was always comforting others. Okay, so how did I get into Life magazine? It really was not easy. Whatever story that important that I do this. But when I had these pictures of domestic violence, this was back in 1982 that I had first photographed a woman being beaten in her home. And I took these pictures into the great John Loengard, who was the photo director at Life magazine. He looked at these pictures and he was starting to shake. He was getting very nervous. And then he said, "Donna, you have done something that I never thought could be done. You have photographed the unphotographable. And I want to give you an assignment, but I'm not going to pay you anything." And I said, "Okay, I don't care. Just pay for my plane tickets, give me film, process the film, and I'll go out in the world. I'll show you what's going on." So that's what I did for 3 years. And I did most of my book, which is this right here. This is called Living with the Enemy. So I worked on this book for 3 years and did half of the book, but still Life would not publish anything because they were afraid of being sued. You know, Life magazine was the top of the Citadel. You couldn't go any higher than Life magazine back in those days. And they were afraid to be sued. But I had model releases from everybody, the men, the women, releases even for the children. I would get releases in the hospitals, with the police, with everybody. That was my job, as well as taking the picture. This is the story of Lisa and Garth. Now, when this happened, I had just given birth a few months before, maybe two or 3 months. And the wife had called me. She was very afraid of him. She hadn't been afraid of him before, But she said that she felt like he was trying to make her go crazy. He was doing something called gaslighting. So he was telling her that he was doing one thing, but really he was doing another, which was trying to make her go crazy, to doubt herself, as he was trying to diminish her. So when I went back with Fanny that day, I saw how skinny she was and the bags under her eyes, and I was very, very worried about her. And I pulled her aside and I said, "You are doing so much cocaine in this house." This was back in 1982. "You have to stop doing the cocaine. That's what's killing your marriage." She hid the cocaine. But then very late that night, as I was sleeping with my daughter down the hall, I could suddenly hear her screaming. And then I went running down into the bathroom as I saw him going to hit her. Now, a lot of you might say, "How can you take a picture of this, Donna," right? This disturbs you. It disturbed me too. But there was just 3 of us in that room. There were no cops, there were no armies, there were no other photographers. And I knew that if I didn't get a picture of that, no one would ever believe that this had happened. But in my head, I was also thinking, if I take this picture, he'll stop. He won't continue. I took the picture, and then when he went to hit her again, I grabbed his arm and I said, "What are you doing? You're going to hurt her." And he threw me on the floor, and he said, "Look it, she's my wife. She has to obey me. She's lying to me now, I can tell. So I have to make her do what I say." From that point on, he never hit her again. But that then became this even more terrible dance, you know, of him looking for the drugs, then finding the drugs, then throwing them down the drain and grabbing his own stash of drugs and telling her, "You see, you can't fool me. I didn't need those drugs, but I had to prove to you that you can't get away with lying to me." She went running off into what they called their disco room, and I chased after her. And she was sobbing on the floor with her hand in her hands on her face. And I said, "Elizabeth, what's going on here? What's going on? Tell me, how are you feeling?" And she said, "My husband always told me that he loved me, and he put me on a pedestal, and I believed in his love. But tonight, he's beaten me like he would not even touch an animal. And I don't think I can believe in his love again." These are some scenes of their marriage back then. You know, they would go shopping. He was always there. He was a computer programmer designer. He was a brilliant man. He was like a Renaissance man, and he was making millions of dollars from big corporations to design their software back in the early 80s. He designed the mansion that they lived in right next door to Richard Nixon. This is the contact sheet. Everything that night in this horrific scene, this nightmare, is on this one roll of film. Now, why? Why is it only one roll of film? Because that's all I had in my pocket. I had the camera. I had a camera with a roll of film, but all of the other film was in my camera bag with my little daughter, and I had put her in the closet. When I heard her screaming, I knew that he had a gun. I put my daughter away because I didn't know what I was going to find. I put her in a closet. She was fast asleep. She was a good baby, and I had my camera bag there. But I was counting off the frames, knowing that I had to be very, very precise with every picture because I didn't know how long this was going to happen. At one point, you see where they're calling the police. She went to call the police. I'm always next to them. He grabs the phone, and he's taking the phone and taking all of her thunder away, and he's saying to the police, "She's crazy. She's trying to hit me. She's violent. She's drunk. We can't trust her." The police hang up. As I learned later, the police were always being called to this house, but I didn't know that at the time. So you kind of see this whole scene playing out where they're accusing each other. Then in here, this to me is like the most horrifying picture ever. It almost looks like he's killing her. But he would let her go. Everything was over. Everything was happening within minutes of insanity. This is Elizabeth today. She left him. She forged her own life. She took all her children. She had 3 sons with him and 2 daughters. She became an independent single mother. No more nonsense. No more drugs. No more alcohol. No more sex parties like her husband always wanted. She lived her own way. She became autonomous. And she could feel pride in herself and pride in her children. And she made sure that they all went to school and got degrees and are doing, they're all doing very, very well. But the father never helped at all. He remarried to a woman, a very rich woman who lived in Florida, who told him, if you come with me, I'll take care of you, but you must never see your family again. And he agreed to that. From that point on, I needed to find out what happens with battered women. And that's what I was doing with Life magazine. And then subsequently, the other magazine that helped me so much was the Philadelphia Sunday newspaper. And I would do these stories about women in prison, and then I would make my own campaigns. I didn't wait for other people to make campaigns for me. I would create my own campaigns because I saw that they were throwing women in prison, giving them 30 years just for trying to defend themselves. And at their trials, they didn't even want to hear that these women were being battered. But for the men who killed their wives, and I would cover those trials as well, the men would get these very short sentences because they would plead guilty. So they would get more like 4 to 6, and if they behaved in prison, they'd get out in 4 years. Very short, small sentences. So I was angry about that. Here's a woman who was put in prison. She pled guilty for 8 years because she found this man, her boyfriend, he was sexually abusing her child. And she took a gun and she shot him. She went to prison for it. This shows you how some of the ways that I started to get magazines to run this. This right here was the first time that a battered woman was ever put on the cover of a Sunday magazine. This was in 1986. It was like a bomb had gone off. When people started to see what a battered woman looks like and how she feels, because I wanted to get into their lives. Then I wanted to find out more about women fighting back, women who are in prison with these ridiculous sentences. This picture here was for Time magazine when O.J. Simpson had just brutally slaughtered his wife and the man who was her friend. And there was a big trial going on at the time about this. And Life and Time magazine had made a big mistake because when they first published a story about this and they put O.J. Simpson's face on the cover, they darkened his face to make him look swarthy. So like a menacing batterer. That was so wrong what they did, so immoral. And everybody was in an uproar about it. So then they had to come to me and say, okay, Donna, we need to do this right. We need to show what is the face of domestic violence. Let's take your pictures, okay? So they put the same woman from my book on the cover of Time magazine. That was very important. And all the pictures inside. And the husband of Elizabeth saw those pictures. Nothing happened to him. He signed releases. Everybody signed, remember, everybody signs a release for me. Then many years later, I had the opportunity to meet with Hillary Clinton. This is the day that Bill Clinton was being inaugurated into the White House. And I had an opportunity to bid on Hillary Clinton at a like a fundraiser for this Child Care Action Committee. And I had to meet her because I wanted to talk to her about domestic violence. She was not even, the election had not happened. She was the governor's wife at this time. But I knew she was going to win. Well, they were going to win. And so I bid $4,500, and I beat all the other women who were vying to have a tea party with Hillary Clinton. And I won it. And so the few days before they were going to be going to the White House and having the inauguration, she wrote to me and said, when do you want to have the tea party, Donna? And okay, let's do it right away. So this was inauguration day. Here you see Elizabeth. because I brought Elizabeth with me to show so that Hillary could really understand who are these battered women that you kind of hear about, but you never really know. Here's my daughter, Fanny. There's my dad, PJ, taking the pictures. He had some very clever tricks up his sleeve that day with Hillary. But I tell you, Hillary was a disappointment to me that day. I had all these important women from the domestic violence community from across America with me. And we were all very honored to be in that room with her. But when we tried to get her to talk about domestic violence, and Bill Clinton was the son of a battered woman, he knows what women go through. But Hillary was never abused. She was loved and respected in her family. It was hard for her to understand. And what she told us was that she just wanted to understand the language of domestic violence. We wanted to establish a think tank. She wanted to understand the language. And what she said was, women have to take responsibility for the violence in their lives, because oftentimes we get them the protection orders, we get them divorces, and then they go right back to the abusers. This was a really bad thing to hear in those days. Then, you know, these early days, I got an assignment to photograph Margaret Atwood. This was 1985, and her book called The Handmaid's Tale had just been published. Yeah, I hope some of you have seen that, or read the book at least, or seen the series on TV. Incredible. She pre-visualized everything that was going to be happening in the United States for women's rights. And it's all in her book. And so I'm doing a new book called Holy, and she's one of the main characters in this book. Here you see, this is a picture that has been very important, because it shows how a child feels when the father is beating the mother. I went in with the cops. Everything, all hell was breaking loose. The boy here was showing the cops the weapon that the father was using, which is a screwdriver, and he'd hidden it under the bed. Well, as they were taking the father out and going through his pockets, and this is about 9 o'clock in the morning, I have a strobe in my bag. It's completely dark in this house. All the shades are drawn. So I whip my flash out, and I'm bouncing it into the ceiling, because you can't miss when things are happening like this that are so important. You can't afford to miss it. You got to get it. You got to have a flash, whatever it takes. You got to get that picture. So he's saying to his father, I hate you for hitting my mother. Don't you ever come back to this house. As I was leaving the house, I said to the wife, because every time I go into somebody's home, it's not the cops who have to get permission for me to be in there. It's me. I have to convince the woman at the time of all of this craziness to please let me be there to photograph. And I always say, don't worry, I'm not going to publish anything unless you sign a release. And so this is the mother here. She'd given me permission. But as I was leaving, and I said, could you sign this release? She said, no. What magazine did you say you're from? And I said, Life magazine. And she said, I thought you said Ebony. No, I don't want to sign a release. So when I developed this film and saw everything on that roll of film, and the director of photography at Life magazine really wanted these pictures, I had to go back to Minnesota and talk with the father and the mother and get releases from all of them. This is in a batterer's re-education program, very important. These programs are the lifeline for most marriages that really have a chance to survive. The men have to go into these programs, and there they learn how to control their rage and to get in closer contact with their feelings, with their emotions. Here's Lisa, what I love about a lot of these women and what I've been able to see with them is that they don't go back. They become the unbeatable women. And she did not go back, even though her mother was trying to encourage her. Here you see a woman who was run over by her boyfriend after they were having a fight in the truck, and she fell out of the truck and he ran her over. She had to drag herself back to the hospital. Women, they go from being, like victims and losing at everything to giving each other support and getting stronger. And that's what I want to see. I want to see women getting stronger. I want to see men changing. I want to see people learning how to communicate with each other. I really want to see the children getting stronger. All of these children I go back to. All of these children I spend a lot of time getting to know over the years. And sometimes they call me. Like this boy, his father had been very violent to him and his brother. There were marks across his body. He was psychologically very damaged. And I was able to see this woman trying to leave the father before he could kill her. And then I stayed with them over 3 years. Here they are right here after being with them for 3 years. And they're at a big rally for victims of domestic violence here. So I was able, and that's her mother and father here. That's a great story too, but we don't have time to go into all of these stories. This looks like a very scary picture. It is a very scary picture. This is a sex worker. She worked without a pimp. It really blew my mind. It was very intense and scary. I don't think it's noble work. You know, some people today in the world, they see something different. But I find this kind of work very demeaning to women. And it would scare me so badly when I would see her getting into the cars with these strange men. I went to the Persian Gulf War. I had to really push for that assignment. I wanted to see women who fight. I wanted to see women who will be out there fighting alongside with the men. So I never worked in a pool. I had to wait until I had my chance to go to fly into Riyadh, and then I had a driver, and we drove across the desert, and we went into Iraq, and I was able to really like work with the pilots and other soldiers, and then Life magazine published that story, Women at War. These are women who work the fields in California, but they also are radicalizing the other women to know what their rights are, to get good salaries, to not be abused, to be able to build their own homes. This is a series that is about the neighborhood that I have lived in for the last almost 25 years, Tribeca. This is where the World Trade Center went down back in 9/11/01. And the reason that I started to do this study of my neighborhood was because I realized at that moment that everything that we see in front of us, everything that we take for granted in our lives is so, it's beyond fragile. It's not permanent. It's an illusion if we think we're secure. Everything can go like that. Within 15 minutes, the most powerful, big, strong building in the world that represented everything about capitalism went crashing down to nothing. And so in my neighborhood, this is my block where I live on. This is called the Jenga building. In this building, people are paying $100 million to live up there. This is quite an extraordinary architectural feat, but it looks like madness, really. Now, what I do to get these kinds of pictures is I go running around on top of rooftops. I look for any way to get into a building and go up and see what's happening. Yeah, nobody asking me a question here, right? No. Okay. Okay. So, and I like to look from up high. I like to go wherever I can find. I like to be like a bird or a falcon, you know, an eagle. I want to see everything from high up first, especially when there's amazing light. But then I am also looking for these kinds of symbols too, like a ladder is very important. When you see a ladder in a scene, and also with this, the crumbling, they're pulling down this building. They're getting ready to destroy it to build a new one. So to have that ladder meant that they're going somewhere. Hopefully they're going to build something that everybody will be happy and proud. So it's like the ladder to happiness and success. So I'm always looking for those symbols in my pictures. And, you know, this is how I set up a picture. Okay, this is Mickey Rourke here. And he's walking by a site that had been a parking lot. Very famous law school was going up right here. Now, I was sitting in a classic Tribeca cafe called the Odeon with my eye on the window, you know, and all of a sudden I see Mickey Rourke walking by. So I ran after him and I said, Mickey, you know, I'm the Tribeca historian, and I really need to have a picture of you right now. He said, right now? Yeah, right now. So I said, okay, what do you want me to do? And I said, I don't want you to do anything except stay where you are right now, and in about 2 minutes, I want you to just go walking across West Broadway and Leonard Street and just keep walking, because I wanted to get him in this spot so we could see how it was empty before the Jenga came, before the law school library. So here he is, just walking across. He sees me crouching. I'm hiding behind one of these because still I like to be invisible if possible. And he walked. I took 2 pictures. And as he made it to the curb on the other side, he gave me the peace sign like that. Just walked on. You know, no conversation really. But that's a set-up picture. These are all the ways that I try to show the beauty of this neighborhood, the beauty of what we have right now, which could all be gone so quickly. That's the power of a photograph. A photograph is evidence, but it's also a sign that, look at, this is who we are. This is what we create. This is the incredible power of being in a city where everything is changing all the time, and people are investing, and they're developing. That's why I like Dubai so much. Dubai thrills me. I'm really thrilled by all the architecture here and the new developments. But at the same time, I see the fragility of our lives always. You know, just a little twig can represent so much in a blinding snowstorm. Here, this is Taylor Swift. She's my neighbor. She lives around the corner from me. I heard that she was like all the paparazzi. You can always tell when Taylor Swift is leaving her house because the paparazzi are going mad. So she was in an Indian restaurant, and so I walked over there to catch all of these. There were like 30 paparazzi and all their flashes going off at the same time. And so I took a picture. I didn't have a flash, but I did a slow shutter speed on her using their flashes, but like getting this like ghostly image of Taylor walking across the street. And that, you know, and Franklin Street. I'm always, you know, you have to keep all these details in mind. When you are putting a story together, it's not just about getting the person. You have to show where they're at. This is her bodyguard. You have to put it all together. You have to be thinking about all these details that help you to understand, what is this picture about? Why does it matter? And I love to see men working. That's what thrills me the most, is when I see men really doing the work that makes a difference, and they're working together. They're building this. This is the garage across from my building, which was just a garage for many years, called the Provenzano Garage. To get this picture, again, I knew that they were going to be doing this floor. I knew I would be able to see the Woolworth building, and I was fascinated that they were going to be pouring the concrete. So I ran over to the garage, and I went all the way up to the top of another building, and then I was able to stand above them. I could have never stepped in here myself. I didn't have those kinds of boots. And then leaning out, you know, you have to lean all the way out to be able to get the right angle. You don't just stand there and take any picture. You have to create the picture. Here you see the Jenga from the perspective of the building across from me that is now the 23 Leonard Street, which is one of the most powerful buildings on my block. I think it's even more powerful than the Jenga. I would go there every night when there was a beautiful sunset, because lighting is very important to me. But I love this building because it's so solid. The steel is just, and here we are in the Jenga. This is, you know, 86 stories up high. A real estate broker was showing me around because I want to see what it's like up in there. And he was in the shower looking for the knob to get out, and that was the picture. And these are the young men who come to the neighborhood right on my block again, just to skateboard, and they love it. They just go flying through the air across this loading dock, all metal loading dock. They're really cool, these guys. So it's showing like the whole neighborhood. I want to show the flavor of the neighborhood. We have homeless people, we have alcoholics. The homeless people live very well in Tribeca. They can sleep anywhere they want to, and they don't have to pay $100 million. And people feed them, and we give them support, and nobody beats them up. Puffy's is one of the oldest taverns in the neighborhood. But again, you see, I make sure I get the street name in there. These are important things. If you want to document a neighborhood, you need to make sure that you put those street names or the things that represent the neighborhood or the street in the picture. Make it very clear. This is my building. When I first saw it, it was just a broken down old building. No one had ever lived in there. And it was amazing back in 1996 to see how the men were working in this way with their hammers and their, just their muscles and their labor and their sweat. Now, again, this might look like an artistic picture. It was taken at Odeon again. But for me, it was right after the Twin Towers had fallen, so we didn't have it. This was taken in 2005. We didn't have anything. It was just a big empty hole in the land there. There was no more menacing of the Twin Towers. But here, these salt shakers became the towers. All of these symbols of shadows are the towers or something else. The liquor store. This was a very famous place for many years to go and drink in. They call it a watering hole. But it was turned into a J. Crew store. And J. Crew had just gotten the lights turned back on. And I think they were making some kind of a movie here, like the Princess, whatever, Bride, something like that. Everybody's making movies in Tribeca. So I use that as a way to also make more exciting pictures with what here. This is all from the movie. There's like going crazy with, filling the streets with water that looked like it was coming from the sky, but it's coming from a giant hose. These are the things that I look for, the quirky things. I like pictures to be alive. This is from the Roxy Hotel. And I like this picture too, very much, because these women represent danger. Danger, be careful. You don't treat us right? Be careful of what we can do to you. I like that. I like to see these things that have symbolic meanings. This is all Tribeca, my beloved Tribeca. The other day I was going to visit a friend in the building across the street, and I see this cab driver. He pulls over. He feels safe here. He's going to make his prayers at this moment. Everybody, you can see the man working in the background here. And the man is praying. And it all is in balance. This is the way we need to live together. We need to watch for each other, watch over each other, respect each other. This is a big problem in America, And we're always out there. We're always protesting Trump. I just want you to know that. We're trying to do everything we can to stop him. And this is the last picture of my presentation. And I want to tell you about how I got this picture, because it says a lot about me as a photographer, because I am relentless. When I know that something is important, I don't give up. I will do anything I can to get that picture. So one day I'm walking home from the Leica store in Soho, and I can see that the Tower 1 is shrouded in fog. And it was magnificent. It was late in the afternoon, magnificent. And I knew that I had to have that picture but I needed a 90 millimeter lens, and I only had a 35. So I went rushing home. Then I went to my neighbor's house, and I said to Richard, please, can I borrow your 90? Okay, I got to go take a picture. He gives me his 90. Then I go running over to people who live closer to the World Trade Center, and I know they have a rooftop, even though I'd never been on it. I got into their house. I said, please take me up to the roof. Quickly, quickly. We go to the roof. I take a few pictures, but it's not very good. Then I see they have a water tower with a very high ladder that's going all the way up. And so with my Leica and my cowboy boots and this 90 millimeter lens, I climb up to the very top. And I'm hanging on with one hand on the ladder and the other with my Leica, and shooting it just like that. I guess I was holding on with this hand and shooting with the Leica. And I'm shooting and shooting until all of a sudden I see this plane coming out of the sky right over it. And for me, this was like a 360 degrees moment. You know, where the plane is there, it's all together, but nothing bad happens. No bombs falling from the sky. And that's, you know, that's definitely, that's the last picture in this. Now, I have a lot of stories to tell you, but I'm really interested to hear what kind of thoughts you might have about these pictures. I'd like to hear more from you. And I don't want you to get bored. I don't want you to be too tired tonight. So I think we should start to have a dialogue with each other before it gets too late. Yes.
It's a lovely timeline of pictures that you have there. Beautifully set with all the timeline, and starting in the 60s and all the way to the 2000s. But one question though, why none of the pictures in color?
Pardon?
Why none of the pictures are in color?
You know, like some of these pictures, many of them are color. And the color is very beautiful. But I desaturate color because for me, color is very distracting. I don't really like to I don't like to show color because I think that people get so distracted by the beauty of color. I'm going something deeper, something that's below the surface. And I feel that you don't really get to that unless it's black and white. You don't really look at what people are feeling and see what in their eyes what they're going through unless it's in black and white. So it's what I respond to, you know, and so because these are pictures that I make, I think every photographer in here must realize that you make the picture, you make it whatever it is. If you say it's black and white even though it's color, it's black and white. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yes.
Thank you very much for these pictures, for your work. We feel that there is such harmony between you and your work and your pictures. We feel it. I feel it personally. I have just a question. It has that I really am very curious to know from such an artist photographer like you. Do you think that you would do the same work if you had only one eye, if you see only one eye?
That's an unusual question. Would I do the same work if there was only one eye? I would be thanking God if I had one eye. It would be very sad for me to never be able to see the world again. So I would be very thankful for that one eye. When I'm photographing, often I just use one eye. I close the other eye, and I will just use my right eye. Sometimes I just use the left eye to give the right eye a break. But yes, I think that I would be thankful, I would be appreciative for whatever I would be given to continue as a photographer. Yeah. Yes. Please, in the back here. I thank God, but I also thank the Mother of God. I want you to know I see them together. Yes.
After seeing your images, I feel that Donna today is exactly the same like 30 years before.
Yeah?
What drives you?
What drives me?
Yes.
Um, you know, Joseph Kudelka asked me that once too. What drives me? And I had to say to him, love. And he says, I know, Donna, you love people. It's always about love. But this is it. This is what drives me, is love and humanity. I want to see people being together. I want to see things working out. I want to see people showing respect to each other. That's what drives me, is to be part of that. The part of life that I think is more about our redemption. That's what drives me. And I will be like this until the day I die, you know. Nobody can snuff that out of me. And no, thank you. No, they can't stop it. And I think what drives me too is my daughter. You know, I want to do good things for my daughter. I have a grandson who's half Syrian. His father is from Syria. I want to do good things for the children. I want to show that, this world belongs to the children, and we have to make it a better place for them. So I want to be part of that. I want to be part of people feeling better about the world that they live in. I believe in us. I really believe. This is such an important word that was used in this great competition here with HEPA. HIPAA understood that hope was the word that we need to be thinking about right now and showing how it relates through a photographer's eye. We know, what can we learn about hope? And I was a little bit cynical, because whenever people say, oh, I hope that changes, or I hope she lives, I don't really accept that. And I always say, hope is nothing unless you really work at it, unless you help people, unless you get in there and do something to make it go in the direction that you want it to go in. So, but I think that really hope is what pushes me, continues to push me forward, because even though I may see things in a very bad light at the moment, I keep hoping that it will change if we all work together. And my job as a photographer is to keep showing how people change. I don't want to just go to wars. I can't do that. I don't want to see people starving to death and just take a picture. That's meaningless to me. I need to see how I need to be involved. And if I'm just taking a picture, that's not good enough. I need to be with people that I can actually have a conversation with, and I can see why they're suffering so much and how we can turn it around, how I can help them doing something more than taking a picture. I don't really think pictures are enough. It's about action. Tell me, what you were going to ask a
Yes.
question, please.
Actually, when I was watching your pictures, you brought us in depth about your personality. All reflect your personality. Where are you now? And you represent all the murdered women, all the tortured ladies that passed through a long way of suffer, and you are sending a big message and let their shout reach all the world.
Thank you.
Big clap for her.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. You know, another thing that I've done with my photographs that I haven't talked to you too much about is, early on I realized that what women needed in these programs was money. They needed shelters, they needed food, they needed programs. We needed to change laws in America. That's what has been going on for the last 30 years. We've been changing a lot of laws so that domestic violence actually became a crime on the books, and that the police had, laws that would help them to make arrests and to put the abuser into prison. But the shelter programs are always badly funded. So I started a non-for-profit to be able to raise funds for all these shelter programs using a lot of those pictures. And I continue to do that. And that's been my mission for a very long time, to educate people about domestic violence and then to raise the money for them. None of the money comes to me. I think I made that clear last night. People pay a very low fee, but all the money that they raise is their money to put into their programs. Yes.
First of all, thank you so much. It was so captivating. I felt a little bit sad that it was the last picture. I wish there's more. And that's actually my question. What is your current project? And
Well,
what's next?
thank you.
I want to know and I want to follow your work.
Well, okay, great. I would love that. Yeah, I'll give you all my social media contacts, but my current program is this book of Holy. This book is going to be a bit of a controversy. It's going to be hard for people to take because of Trump. It's all Trump's fault. Because as a free woman, who's been working so hard on this issue of violence against women. I'm very angry that he has been diminishing everything that women feel and everything that we know is our right to have autonomy in our lives over our bodies, you know. The abortion issue is a very divisive one in the States, and Trump has done a lot to put the courts into a position where they're being run by very, very conservative people who don't believe in a woman's right to choose. So I have to figure out, with Holy, I have to be more subversive and figure out how to get people to pay attention to what women are saying and doing and feeling. The project that I'm doing is about Tribeca. That will be the next big book. And I have some things here that I brought with me that you are welcome to come up and look at, which is, this is the original Living with the Enemy. There have been 50,000 copies of this book printed. Now, to you that might not sound like a lot, but for a photo book, it's really a lot. They reprinted it 4 times, but then after Michael Hoffman died, they stopped printing it. Aperture doesn't want to do this book anymore. So it's, and in the new book of Holy, there are pictures of battered women. There are pictures in abortion clinics. There are pictures from my life, my family. There are pictures of sexuality, women's sexualities. Our sexuality, I think, is extremely important. We can be better as women if we know who we are, if we know our bodies well. I was telling my friend Lucia the other day that in San Francisco, Uber is now pushing, they're doing a pilot program to have autonomous cars, driverless cars, that can take you wherever you want to go. And this is really a terrible irony, because where we're taking away women's rights to be autonomous, we're more focused on a machine having all the autonomy and the rights. So I'm really trying to figure out all the time how to be relevant, how to keep my mind on what matters as a woman, for other women, for girls, for boys, and you know, I want everybody to understand each other better. So that's what I work on. And then I also have this portfolio of pictures that we made for the Tribeca collection too, and I'm happy to show you any of these things. And I think I need to find a new place to live, you know. You know, because New York is getting a little, it's changed so much. It's lost a lot of its soul, and it is very sacred ground. And I will always be happy to go back there and visit. But I think it's time to explore new horizons. So I'm thinking about that. I like Dubai. I like Dubai. Yeah, I really do. Doobie doobie doo. It might be here in Dubai. You never know. Pardon? Okay, good. I found that so far. I was very happy when I went to Damascus, you know, before the war started. I really loved it there.
I just want to ask something.
Mm-hmm.
All the time I'm watching, first of all, thank you, it was a great job. But what my mind always was asking me that I'm feeling bad because I'm a guy, I'm a man, and this is almost presenting men as monsters. And I didn't see the cause, at least something to show me that I'm different. What makes those men beating women?
What makes those men beating women?
Yeah, so if you,
Different?
yeah,
I think because you feel sad when you look at these. You feel sad. Also, I was talking with Tom yesterday, and he was saying that looking at my book makes him, or it was just this morning in the breakfast room, he feels very sad when he looks, he's ashamed when he thinks about the abuse that men do to women. It makes him very sad. And I think that a good man will feel like that and will want to do something about it in how they live with their wives and how they treat their daughters and their friends. And if you hear that a man is abusing a woman, you will stand up and say, you can't do this, man. You know, we're all together. Whatever I can do to help you, I'll help you.
yeah.
But we need men to be
yeah,
very conscious.
yesterday somebody was asking, what's next?
Mhm.
The picture, okay, mothers traveling or carrying a child or whatever, what's next? So in this story, we can ask, what's the cause? So if you, let's say, in my opinion, what makes man beats woman, either drunk or drug overdose. So if this were presented in this story, it will make me feel happy because I'm not that man.
No, I can't give you a happy ending here. No, I'm very sorry because that's really not the code. That's not the issue is alcoholism and drugs. It's basically, truly, it's man's fear. It's man's insecurity. It's man feeling that he's lost control over his wife or his children. And I have many stories in my book of men who are very powerful men, some of them in Reagan's administration, white men, very educated. To the outside world, they look like good men. Beating his wife all the time, leaving her deaf in one ear, beating the children. She had to leave him. It's about power and control. It's really, sometimes with some men, a lot of alcohol can kind of trigger it and make him more violent. But the issue is power and control. And why is it that anyone would ever think that they had the right to control a woman? Why? When we're here on this planet, we're doing everything that we can to help our men, to help our brothers and our fathers, to raise our children, to give them love. Why does any man want to hurt a woman? Why do they want to rape women? Why do they want to rape children? This is not about alcoholism. This is something much deeper. And I do think that lately men are losing their way. Maybe not in this society, but in a lot of societies where there's so much violence, so much. And, you know, look at the Catholic Church always condoned it. They always made women feel guilty if their husband was beating them. What did you do to ask for it? It's your fault. You need to change. You need to make the house nicer. You need to stop questioning him, talking so much all the time. You know, instead of saying, you know, when they stand up to give their sermon, that if there's any man in the church who's beating his wife, this is a sin. This is a very immoral sin. This is what people need to hear. And poor women need to hear this too, because right now they really think it's all their fault. And they will stay in these relationships because they feel they deserve it. And probably wherever they go, it's going to happen again. But I don't agree with that. I know a lot of men will not be violent. They will not behave like this. They will communicate. They will talk. If they're angry, they'll walk out the house. They'll try to deal with their feelings as a real man will try to deal with them, not to hurt others. So I always encourage women to leave these relationships. If you've given it a try 1, 2, 3 times and it's getting worse, get out. Because as I always show women in my pictures, eventually it will get so bad that you're going to have to kill him or he's going to kill you. If he kills you, it's all over. He gets the kids, he gets everything. It's easy for him. But if you kill him and you stop him from ever doing this again to any other woman, not just yourself, you're doing a service to humanity, I think, because I believe that women have the right to defend themselves. We have that right. We're not caged animals. Thank you.
I think here we are past. I don't know. Cor- correct me if I. Correct me if I'm mistaken. I think we. Yeah, correct me if I'm mistaken. I think we are sending here some wrong message. We need to change the laws. We don't. We need to encourage the woman to kill her husband. If there is something wrong, she should go to the police station and they should punish him. Yani usually she don't need to destroy her life. She has responsibility, she has children, she has something to look after, she has something beautiful in the future. If he need punishment, he should be punished. We should educate the people and the government and the people and the police to change the law, not to push the lady to kill her husband.
Nobody's pushing her.
Yeah, this is.
To survive. But I say you are very idealistic. You are very idealistic. You have not walked in the shoes of any of these women who've seen their children raped and abused. No, 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 no. And the laws are changing. Like in the United States now, all of the laws that we built and created, they're gone. They're gone. And the women do go to the police. And and the women, they do go to the police. They do press charges, and then the men hunt them down and kill them. Yes, absolutely. The system is screwed. It's screwed against all of us. But we have to work together. We need you good men to get out there and be marching with us and helping us to change the laws. We can't do it by ourselves.
Well, it's time for you to do something when you feel bad.
Yes,
It's time for you to do
please.
something when you feel
Please
bad.
stand up. Please
Because
stand.
because the more we let it happen, the more we're silent about it.
Quiet.
The more we let it happen, the more we're silent about it. The more we don't do anything about it. It keeps increasing and increasing, and there is nothing that it gets out of control. And it's not about pushing people. It's not about telling people what to do. It's more about the mindset that needs to be changed for everyone, because what she's representing is storyline of everyone who suffered, who didn't have a chance to say their voice, and how we can do it in our society. What keeps me thinking is, how can we as modern Emiratis, people who we respect our culture, our heritage, our religion, which is totally against violence, how do we change the perception without disrespecting any of the laws and regulations, religion, culture, heritage, family values? How do we go about without breaking any rules? How do we go about without breaking any laws? Because, for example, we have photography law against anybody taking picture in public of an incident. Like, even though if we release a form, we can't release that anywhere with not just with the consent of a person. It doesn't matter if we have consent, but it's against the law, and we can only share it. We can only share it with the police. We can't share it anyone. There are many things behind it. You and I, it's above you and I that we can't understand or comprehend, because again, it goes back to values and culture, and we don't normally share our pictures as selfies. You will see a lot of social media Instagrammers, they do it, they're influencers, but some of the families, they prefer not to be seen. It doesn't matter. It's not about they don't want to voice their fears, but they just don't want to be seen. It's a very small community. It's a very small town. I call it Dubai. It's very small because we're not just as Emiratis, but also as Dubaiers. We're very small, and word gets out very easily. So it's not like as big as the U.S., where story dies down very quickly. Here on, it lives on for a long time, and people, once they forget it, it keeps coming back again and lives again. So, to you as someone who's gone through this experience of life changing and setting goals and setting or helping people out, what kind of message do you send to people like us, where we're passionate about what we do? We're here to change the world's perception about not just women, about our environment, about what we live in, about what we're destroying, or about how we're affecting the ecosystem of marine life, for example. What kind of a message do you leave us with tonight?
This is really good. Thank you for giving me the chance to leave you with something that will hopefully lift you up a little higher, you know, after this kind of dark and sad and disturbing portrayal of relationships between men and women. And I'm very glad to hear that things with the Dubaiers are good, that you know, there's a sense of respect and equality between the men and the women. And the children, from what I see, children are very happy here. And I like to see children playing and running and being protected. So you can become leaders in this way. I see there's an opportunity here, but we have to be realistic. Unless somebody starts to talk with women and hear their stories and really understand what is really hurting them that they can't talk about. We need to hear from them. We need to understand women better. And I think that this is probably a moment where you can be leaders in this area and healers here, because I for one can't believe that there's no domestic violence happening here. And you don't have alcohol issues, you know, or big drug, not like we have in so many parts of the States. So, but as I said before, that's not the cause of domestic violence. The cause of domestic violence is oftentimes when boys are growing up in homes where they see the mother is too controlled and she doesn't have a voice and she doesn't know how to really express what's wrong to her, what's hurting her. Then the children see that their mother she's diminished. She doesn't have a big role except to be there to take care of their needs. But they see that she's sad. So we need to really hear from the women much more. I think there are probably issues that you don't see or know about because you're not supposed to know. It's uncomfortable. You don't want to be scared. A lot of people don't even want to look at this book. They don't want to be scared. It makes them feel bad. You don't want to feel bad. But I think it's good to feel bad. That's real. That's the real world. You know, this is a beautiful city. It's an amazing place. But it's not Disney World. This is not a fake world, is it? This is real. And there are really good, strong values here. So there should be some openness. We need more openness. We need more communication. We can't just say we hope things are going to go better. We have to really listen to women more. Women are the descendants of the mother of God. How can we put women down and say we don't need to hear from them? We don't need to understand what they need to feel like like their lives matter and they're going somewhere and their dreams matter too. It can't just be all the men that we hear from all the time. That's how I feel. It has to be balanced, and I believe men will be much happier if it's like that. Yes.
I totally agree with what's being said. I think this presentation and your work is as simple as identifying and framing the problem, and this is by all means, with any standards, is the first step to finding a solution, is to understanding the problem and framing it and probably admitting that it's there. And that's a leap forward toward the solution, whatever it is, whether it's changing the laws, changing the culture, education at school, whatever the solution is, it all starts by framing the problem and admitting and highlighting the problem, and that's what you try to do, and that's your job. And thank you so much for it. It's
for Mohammed and the whole HIPAA team, for all of you to bring me here to show these pictures. I don't think pictures like this have ever been shown in Dubai. So I think this is a big step forward for all of you too. You know, it's I feel like we are working on something that is so powerful together, and we're opening our eyes, which means we're opening our hearts, because the eyes are the window to your soul, to you know. So we want to see what's inside of everybody, not just the few. Thank you. Thank you so much. Have I missed anyone here who would like to say something more? Yes? Yes?
Out of all the pictures you've taken, which photo affected you the most?
Okay. This is
Okay, out of all the pictures you've taken, which affected you the most?
of all of these pictures, I think the one that affected me the most is the boy shouting at his father. When his little voice came out, he was in so much pain, and hearing him speak up against his father was a very pivotal moment. Because before that, I had always been told children are not so affected by domestic violence. You know, they don't even know it's happening most of the time. They're quiet and things will die down. It's not so bad. That's the way people used to think back in the 80s. I went with the father. I got in the cab, in the car, the police car with the father. And I sat in the back of it with him, and I said to him, why did you do this? Why? I don't understand. Because he didn't seem to me to be a raging man. He wasn't drunk. He hadn't been drinking. He wasn't doing drugs. And I felt really, you know, terrible about this whole situation. And he said to me, you know, I used to be a drinker, and I used to be abusive. But for the last 10 years, I've been in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I don't do any drinking anymore. And I'm not violent. But this night, my wife had done something very bad. She'd taken our family savings, and she did something bad. I'm not going to say what it was. And he said he just flipped out. He didn't know what to do. He didn't know how to control his emotions. And he was ashamed of himself. And I said to him, I said, please, you have to remember that if you get really angry like that, it's going to be bad for you. You're paying the price. You're going to go to jail. There's going to be a trial for you. So we all have to learn how to talk with each other better. You know, and of course I think that the mother was in the wrong. She has tried to suppress that picture all these years. But I had a release, an ironclad release that she could not get around. I met with the son, Diamond. He's now in his 30s. He's the age of my daughter. And I got to know him and photographed his life. And he said his mother's still been mad about that picture being published all these years. Not the father, but the mother. So I think that that picture has done so much to change the way society thinks about children. And I think that we need to give children the voice. We need to hear, we need to listen to them. Parents need to listen to their children, because the children see things like nobody else. And they're not as ignorant as we think they are. Sometimes they're even wiser than their parents. We need to support the children. We need to protect them. And that's what that picture means to me, all in one. You know, all in one. That's like that's the most forceful picture I've ever taken in my life. And tender at the same time. It may look sad to you, but for me it's very, very tender. And I could see how all of those police were so moved. They never heard a child shout at the father like that and say those things. Many years later, when I was trying to find the family, I went to the police station. And there, all the men who are in that picture, and there's one female cop, they're so proud of that picture. They have it, you know, the magazine anyway. I brought them very large pictures. But they said that they have been following that for years, seeing it being used in so many different ways to educate society. So they were very proud to be part of that. But, you know, the police also told me that the mother, maybe just like 20 years later, was still trying to do something. She was trying to sue the city for allowing me to go into their house and take that picture. But the policewoman said to her, Donna would have never published that picture if you hadn't signed a release. Did you sign a release? And she said yes. So that's it. I mean, you can't stop it. That's what's so powerful about a photograph. Once you take it and you put it out there in the right ways, in the right channels, and it keeps going. It's like a stone that you skip across the surface of water, and it just keeps making ripples and ripples and ripples, and it goes all the way out to the ocean and gets swallowed. That's what a photograph is all about. You can't shut it down. You can't stop it. So that picture is definitely the most important, meaningful, valuable piece of documentation that I've ever done. Thank you. So let's go next door and have some juice and sandwiches and talk to each other.
It
Take
is
some
over now. Now
pictures.
they will get their certificates. Thank you,
your
Donna.
certificates. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
for
Donna,
coming,
for the
being part of
wonderful.
this.
Thank you. Thank you. It was really touching, and it was a unique subject to look at it here in Dubai, and yeah. Thank you, everybody, and stay tuned till tomorrow. We have Tom Ang. He will talk about future of photography. Come again, and have a nice Thursday evening.